Here is something almost nobody tells you about growing herbs at home. Most people fail for one reason, and it is not skill. They pick the wrong plants from the very start. They buy the needy ones. The ones that beg for daily water, constant fussing, and replanting the second you turn your back. Then they decide they have a black thumb and quit. But a complete herbal garden was never meant to be hard work. There is a small group of herbs that do almost all the work for you. They come back on their own. They spread on their own. They get stronger while you sit there doing nothing. Most people walk straight past them. Today, I am going to show you exactly which ones they are, and why the people who understand this quietly stop buying herbs from a store for the rest of their lives. So let me be clear about what we are really doing here, because it changes everything. Most gardening advice is built around plants that live for one short stretch and then die. You feed them, you water them, you fight the bugs, and at the end you have nothing left but an empty pot. That is a job. That is not a garden. What we are building instead is a garden that runs itself. Every plant on this list either lives for years, returns on its own, or multiplies without asking your permission. You put in a little effort one time, and then the plant pays you back again and again, long after you have forgotten you planted it. The trick is knowing which herbs are built this way. Once you do, the whole thing stops feeling like chores and starts feeling like something closer to owning a small piece of land that quietly makes you richer. Let me show you the plants that make that possible. And I am going to start with the one that proves the entire idea. 1. Oregano, the plant that ends your dependence on the store. Start here, because oregano teaches the single most important lesson in this whole video. Most people meet oregano as a tiny plant in a plastic pot at the grocery store. They snip a few leaves, the pot dies in 2 weeks, and they buy another one next month. They treat it like a disposable thing. That is the mistake, and it is quietly costing them money for years. Oregano is a perennial. That word is the secret. It means you plant it one time and it comes back on its own, season after season, for a decade or more. It does not care much about you. Give it a sunny spot and poor, dry soil, and it will actually be happier than if you baby it. The plant that most people kill in a pot will, in the ground, spread into a thick green mat that you have to trim back just to control it. Here is the part almost nobody realizes. Dried oregano is stronger than fresh, and the dried oregano in your cabinet is one of the most marked up spices in the store. You are paying for a jar of leaves that a single plant in your yard would produce more of than your family could ever use. Grow one healthy oregano plant, dry a few handfuls, and you will not buy that jar again for a very long time. And it goes deeper than cooking. Oregano is loaded with a compound called carvacrol, which is the reason people have used it as a medicine for hundreds of years. So this one cheap plant sits in your yard doing 3 jobs at once. It seasons your food, it stocks your medicine shelf, and every couple of years you can split it in half and get a second plant for free. That is what compounding looks like in a garden. You buy it once, and it keeps paying forever. Now that you understand perennials, let me show you one that quietly does a second job you never asked it to do. Most people plant thyme, use a little in a soup, and think of it as just another seasoning. What they miss is that thyme is one of the best living ground covers you can put in a garden. It grows low and wide, hugging the soil, and as it spreads it blocks sunlight from reaching the dirt underneath. No sunlight means no weeds. So while thyme is sitting there looking pretty, it is silently killing the weeds you would otherwise be pulling on your hands and knees every weekend. Think about what that saves you over time. Weeding is the one garden chore people hate the most, and it never ends. A patch of thyme replaces hours of that labor and replaces the money you would spend on mulch to cover bare ground. It does the covering itself, and it feeds you while it does it. It gets better. Thyme is drought-proof. Once it settles in, it can go long stretches without water and shrug it off. And in mild climates, it stays green through the cold months, which means you are harvesting fresh thyme in the dead of winter, when the store is charging the most for a sad little clamshell of it. So this plant lowers your work, lowers your grocery bill, and hands you fresh herbs during the exact stretch of the year when fresh herbs are hardest to get. Most people never see it as anything more than a garnish. The ones who know better treat it like an employee that works for free. You have probably heard that mint spreads like crazy and takes over gardens. That is true, and most people treat it like a warning. I am going to show you why it is actually one of the smartest things you can grow. if you understand the game you are playing. Mint spreads because it wants to multiply. That is its whole personality. Take a single cutting of mint, drop it in a glass of water on your windowsill, and within a week or two it will grow roots on its own. Plant that rooted cutting, and now you have a whole new plant. Do it again and again, and one small starter plant becomes a lifetime supply without you ever spending another cent. Now, the reason people fear it is that it will invade the rest of your garden if you let it. The fix is simple. You plant it inside a buried pot or give it its own separate bed where it cannot escape. Do that one time, and the thing that scares everyone else becomes an asset that keeps generating value. Here is where the payoff really shows. Mint tea, mint for cooking, mint for settling an upset stomach. These are all things people pay real money for. You will produce more than you can use. That means you can dry it, gift it, or even sell small rooted cuttings to neighbors, because mint is so easy to root that you are basically printing new plants. Most people look at mint and see a problem to avoid. The person who thinks a step ahead sees a machine that turns one plant into 100 and never stops. Lemon balm, the free plant most people pull out as a weed. This one is almost funny, because so many people grow lemon balm by accident and then rip it out without knowing what they threw away. Lemon balm is a self-seeder. That means it drops its own seeds around itself, and those seeds sprout into new plants the following year with zero help from you. You plant it one time, and from then on it simply returns free in slightly new spots each year. The problem is that the young plants look a bit plain, almost weedy, so people who do not recognize them yank them out and toss them in the compost. They are literally throwing away next year's harvest. If you know what you are looking at, this plant becomes one of the easiest wins in the whole garden. Crush a leaf, and you get a bright lemon scent. It makes a calming tea that people buy in fancy boxes at the store, the kind sold for stress and better sleep. You are growing that for nothing. But the quiet genius of lemon balm is what it does for everything around it. When it flowers, it becomes a magnet for bees and other pollinators. More pollinators visiting your yard means better harvests from every other plant near it, from your vegetables to your fruit. So lemon balm is not just giving you free tea forever. It is making the rest of your garden more productive at the same time. One plant, and the whole system gets stronger. That is the kind of advantage most people never even know exists. 5. Sorrel, the salad green you will never buy again. Here is a plant most people have never heard of, and that is exactly why it is such an edge. When you know something the crowd does not, you win quietly. Sorrel is a leafy green herb with a sharp, lemony, almost tangy taste. What makes it special is the way it grows. It is what gardeners call cut and come again, which means you harvest the outer leaves, and the plant simply grows more from the center. You are not killing it to eat it. You take what you need and it refills itself over and over for months on end. And it is a perennial, so it does not stop at 1 year. Sorrel is one of the toughest herbs you can grow. It comes back early, it comes back reliably, and it keeps returning for years from a single planting. While other people are out buying bags of salad greens that wilt in the fridge within days, you are stepping outside and picking fresh leaves that grow back before you finish eating. Think about the math over time. Salad greens are one of the most wasted grocery items there is. You buy a big bag, use half, and the rest turns to slime. A sorrel patch flips that completely. You pick only what you need, exactly when you need it, and the plant does the restocking for you. It costs you one planting and rewards you for years. Most people have never even tasted it. That is not a reason to skip it. That is the reason it is worth having. 6. Sage, the powerhouse that wants you to leave it alone. Now I want to break a habit most people have, which is believing that more effort equals more results. Sage is the plant that proves the opposite. Most folks meet sage once a year, around the holidays, and think of it as a seasonal thing you buy for one recipe. What they miss is that sage is a woody perennial that lives for years and gives you an enormous harvest from a single plant. One healthy sage plant will produce far more than a normal family could ever cook with. You will be looking for people to give it away to. Here is the part that surprises people. Sage does better when you neglect it. It comes from dry, sunny, rocky places, so it actually prefers poor soil and very little water. If you fuss over it and keep it wet, you are more likely to hurt it than help it. This is a plant that rewards you for doing less. Read that again, because it flips everything most gardening advice tells you. And sage is not just for cooking. It has been used for a very long time to soothe a sore throat. And a strong sage tea is an old trick people still swear by. So this single plant handles seasoning and a bit of home remedy, lives for years, asks almost nothing from you, and thrives on the exact neglect that kills fussier plants. The lesson sage teaches is the whole point of this video. The smartest garden is not the one you work hardest on. It is the one full of plants that get better while you stay out of their way. 7. Rosemary, the shrub that feeds you and lifts your whole yard. Let me show you a plant that most people kill, and the reason they kill it is that they care too much. Rosemary is not really a delicate herb. In the right spot, it grows into a full woody shrub that can live for many years and get as tall as a bush. The reason people fail with it is that they treat it like a fragile seedling. They water it constantly and keep the soil rich and wet. Rosemary hates that. It comes from dry hillsides and wants to be left thirsty. Overwatering is the #1 way people accidentally kill it. Learn to ignore it, and it will outlive most of the other plants you own. Once you understand that, rosemary becomes one of the best deals in the garden. It stays green all year, so you have fresh rosemary in every month, including the cold ones. Its cuttings root easily, so one plant can become several for free. And because it grows into a real shrub, it does something no small herb can do. It works as landscaping. Here is the angle almost no one thinks about. A rosemary plant can serve as a low hedge or a border along a walkway. That means it is doing the job of an ornamental shrub, the kind you would normally pay good money for at a nursery, while also feeding you and stocking your kitchen. It makes your yard look better, which quietly protects the value of your home, and it does it while handing you free herbs for years. Most people see a small pot of rosemary. The person thinking long-term sees a plant that improves the property and pays rent in the kitchen at the same time. 8. Chamomile, the tea factory that replants itself. If you drink tea, or you know anyone who does, this one is going to feel like a small unfair advantage once you see how it works. Chamomile looks like a patch of tiny white and yellow daisies, and most people who grow it think of it as a decoration. They are missing the real prize. Those little flowers are the exact chamomile that goes into the calming, sleep-helping tea that sells for a premium in every store. You are growing the expensive part yourself, and the plant hands it to you in bunches. But the true magic is how chamomile keeps itself going. It is a strong self-seeder. You let a few flowers dry out and go to seed at the end of the season, and those seeds drop and sprout on the next year. You plant it one time, and after that it simply keeps returning free with no work from you. Your tea supply becomes a permanent feature of your yard, instead of a repeating line on your grocery receipt. Now stretch that out over years. Store-bought herbal tea is one of those small, quiet expenses that add up without you noticing. A box here, a box there, month after month. Chamomile erases that whole category of spending after the first planting. And because it draws in pollinators like everything else on this list that flowers, it is boosting the harvest of the plants nearby while it grows your tea. One planting, a lifetime of calming tea, and a healthier garden around it. That is a return most people would never believe comes from a handful of little flowers. 9. Lavender, the one plant that pays you back 3 different ways. Some plants give you one benefit. Lavender gives you 3 at once, which is why it might be the single most valuable thing you can put in the ground. First, it feeds you. Lavender is a real culinary herb used in baking, in drinks, and in seasoning blends, and the dried buds are sold at high prices for exactly that. Second, it works as a remedy. Lavender has been used for a very long time to calm nerves and help with sleep, and a small sachet of dried lavender does that job for pennies once you grow your own. Third, and this is the one people underestimate, lavender raises the value of the space around it. A row of lavender in bloom is something people pay landscapers to create. It makes a yard look cared for and expensive. And when it flowers, it becomes one of the strongest pollinator magnets there is, which lifts the productivity of every other plant nearby. So lavender is beautifying your property, feeding your kitchen, stocking your medicine shelf, and improving your whole garden's output, all from one plant. And it does all of this while asking for almost nothing. Lavender is drought-proof and thrives in poor, dry soil, just like sage and rosemary. It can live well past 10 years from a single planting. On top of everything else, dried lavender bundles are one of the easiest handmade things to sell or gift, so a few plants can even turn into a little side income. This is what I mean when I say some plants compound harder than others. Lavender is not one benefit. It is a stack of them, growing on top of each other for years. 10. Yarrow, the tough medicinal that actually improves your soil. This next one almost nobody plants on purpose, and that is a shame, because it might be the hardest working plant on this entire list. Yarrow is an old medicinal herb. For a very long time, people used its leaves to help stop bleeding and treat small wounds, which is why it earned a reputation as a plant worth keeping close. But most people today walk right past it because it looks like a common roadside weed. That is the disguise that hides its value. Here is why it belongs in a no-effort garden. Yarrow grows in bad soil that other plants refuse to touch. It is drought-proof. It spreads on its own. You basically cannot discourage it. But the real hidden trick is what it does underground. Yarrow sends down deep roots that pull minerals up from far below the surface. Minerals that shallow-rooted plants cannot reach. When yarrow leaves fall and break down, those minerals get released into the top layer of soil, where your other plants can finally use them. Read that again, because it is rare. Yarrow does not just survive in your garden. It actively makes the ground better for everything growing near it. It is like having a plant that fertilizes the neighborhood for free. Add in the fact that its flowers pull in the good bugs that eat the bad bugs, and you have a plant that defends your garden and feeds your soil at the same time. Most people would never guess a weedy-looking herb could do all that. That gap between what it looks like and what it actually does is exactly where your advantage lives. 11. Bay laurel, the one plant that becomes a lifetime supply. I saved this one for last because it is the purest example of the whole idea. Buy once, harvest forever. Bay laurel is the plant that bay leaves come from, the ones you drop into soups and stews. Now think about how you buy bay leaves today. A tiny jar of dried leaves, a shocking price for what is basically a few leaves off a tree, and you use them slowly over months. People accept that price because they have no idea how easy the source is to grow. Bay laurel is an evergreen. In mild climates it grows into a tree, and in colder places it lives happily in a large pot that you can move indoors when it gets cold. Either way, it lives for a very long time. Once it is established, you simply pick leaves whenever you want them, fresh or dried, and the plant keeps making more. A single bay plant can supply a household with bay leaves for the rest of their life. There is no replanting. There is no season where it dies off. It just keeps standing there, quietly producing one of the most overpriced spices in the store. That is the perfect note to end the list on, because it shows you the destination. The goal was never to work harder in the garden. The goal was to own plants that keep giving long after the effort is done. Bay laurel is patient money. It grows slowly. It lives forever, and every leaf you pick is a leaf you did not have to buy. Plant one and you are set for decades. So look back at what we just walked through. Every single plant on this list breaks the rule most people follow. They all give more when you do less. They come back on their own, they spread on their own, they feed your soil, they draw the bugs that protect your harvest, and they slowly erase a whole stack of grocery costs you have been paying without thinking about it. That is a complete home herbal garden that runs on almost no effort. Not a fantasy, just the right plants chosen on purpose. Now here is what I want you to do, and I want you to keep it simple, because simple is what actually works. Do not try to plant all 11 of these this week. That is how people burn out and quit. Instead, pick two. Just two. Choose the two that fit your life right now. Maybe it is oregano and mint because you cook a lot. Maybe it is chamomile and lavender because you want calm and tea, and a yard that looks good. Maybe it is thyme and sage because you never want to weed or fuss again. Whatever pulls at you, pick two and commit to getting them in the ground. Because that is the real secret hiding underneath all of this. You do not need a perfect garden to change your future. You need one or two smart choices that keep paying you back long after you make them. One plant that returns every year on its own is one less thing you buy, one more skill you own, and one small piece of your life that quietly works in your favor from now on. Plant the first two. Watch what they do while you do almost nothing. And I promise you will understand exactly why the people who know this never go back to the old way.